As Andrew Marr pointed out today,
the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, predicts that Brexit is going to cost us 4% on growth. Yeah.
But that 4% hit to growth caused by Brexit was not given any context that would enable viewers to properly understand it. A 4% hit to growth will actually be twice as damaging to the economy as a deadly pandemic. A pandemic that grounded flights, broke supply chains, caused whole industries from tourism to hospitality to collapse overnight. Here is the chairman of the Office for Budget Responsibility, Richard Hughes.
Since the referendum, we've assumed in our forecast that leaving the European Union is going to reduce our long-run potential output by that 4%. And in our most recent forecast, as I mentioned, we think that the effect of the pandemic is going to reduce that potential output by a further 2%. And so far, the data that we've seen of the impact of Brexit, especially taking into account the fact that the new trading arrangements came in January, is broadly consistent with that assumption that we had, which is that it would reduce our long-run GDP by around 4%.
So still, after all this, Brexit is going to have a bigger impact than the pandemic on the long term?
Yeah, in the long term, it is the case that Brexit has a bigger impact than the pandemic over the long term.
GDP, or gross domestic product, is one of the most important ways of showing how well or how badly an economy is doing. It's a measure, or an attempt to measure, all activity of companies, governments and individuals in an economy. It now appears the long-term impact on the economy of Brexit and the Prime Minister's
great deal
will be double that of COVID. The difference, of course, being the pandemic was an entirely unforeseen global catastrophe, whereas Brexit is entirely self-inflicted. Here is more from Paul Johnson, Director of the Institute of Fiscal Studies.
Voters may not get much feel-good factor. High inflation, rising taxes, poor growth, still undermined more by Brexit than by the pandemic, will see real living standards barely rising and for many falling over the next year.
I'm old enough to remember when we were being told this.
It is a great prospect and a great deal, and I commend it to the House.